A Look at Health is underwritten by the Saratoga Regional YMCA. Your health, your way.
Well, welcome back. I'm here with Dr. Paul. It's Monday. It's time for health and well-being. And of course, the first thing I thought this morning was it's March 3rd. I took January and February off, and I'm 3 days behind in March.
Somebody's got some catch up to do.
And you're going to keep me in line, aren't you?
I am. I'm going to do my best.
Well, you know,
You're
last week, yes, likewise, by the way. Hey, last week we circled in on the 3 things for well-being that we want to concentrate on in the next couple of weeks. And that would be exercise, nutrition, and how you handle stress.
Yeah.
So let's start with nutrition.
Great starting point. You know,
Good.
when I break it down for people and I say that you have those 3 components that contribute to your overall health and well-being, the starting point always has to be nutrition, because it's what you're putting into your body that ultimately dictates what you're giving back out.
Gotcha. So we're talking 3 squares here: breakfast, lunch, dinner.
That's old school, Jesse.
No,
No, it wasn't that at all. Those 3 squares have kind of gone with the wind.
I see. Okay.
So now we're scientifically, research is showing that 4 to 6 meal, smaller meal option throughout the day is ideal.
So I guess we're talking a lot more moderation then, right?
You have to focus on portion size, for sure, but there's some other very salient features of those smaller
Yeah,
portion.
why? Why 5 meals a day?
Well, because you want to stoke that metabolism continuously throughout the day. Because what ends up happening, the less frequently we eat, the more our body metabolism goes into hibernation. And the less we end up, the less we end up burning and expending. And so for really, even for our most elite trained athletes and performers, dancers, they are conditioned to eat more often so that they're constantly fueling the body in a healthy way.
Well, you know, in some regard, I totally understand that. But if you're an athlete or a dancer, think about the physical regimen that they go through.
Right. So
say we're not jumping up and down 12 hours a day. What do we do?
Perfect. So then portion control and moderation comes into major play. So it's this more frequent meal eating every 3 to 4 hours during the day, smaller portion sizes, and I can walk people through what I recommend for portion size. It's nothing more than the fist that we can use, and we touched on that last time. But then the other most important component of these smaller, more frequent meals has to be that healthy, lean protein. That has to be a component of those smaller meals.
Right. You know, you were saying to me last week that your caloric intake is very important. And I think you had said something about the critical mass with protein and with carbohydrates.
Right, that critical ratio. Excellent.
Right.
It should be in a 2-to-1 ratio. And it's easy to consider this ratio of carbohydrate to protein because they're the same number of calories per gram. So on any food item, if you have the number of calories or grams of carbohydrate to protein, they're the same number of calories per gram, 4. And so what you want to do is you want to choose a 2-to-1 ratio of carbohydrate to protein.
Now, would that have something to do then with the fat intake?
So fat is kind of the outside player. Fat is usually contained within a lot of these other food choices that we make, but you do want to limit your fat to about the same relative percentage as protein, about 25% of your intake. So if you're looking at that now ratio overall in your overall intake of 100%, 50% should be these unprocessed whole grain carbohydrate sources, so fresh leafy green vegetables, legumes, lentils and kidneys and all the healthy beans, nuts for that matter, and then the grains, the whole grains and the fruits. So that should be 50% of your intake. And then 25% of your overall daily intake should be these healthy lean sources of protein. Things like fish, eggs, nuts, lean meats, yogurt, dairy items. Those are the healthy protein sources. So both plant and animal of protein. And then 25% should be the healthy fats and oils, things like nuts and olive oil and things.
So I guess what you're saying is then you would manage over the course of the day how you sort of source those and then how you sort of pace yourself through the day.
Yeah, if you can plan on putting together these small little meals in that ratio of 2-to-1 carbohydrate to protein and consume those every 3 to 4 hours, you're going to feed your metabolism properly, you're going to feed your overall health and well-being at its highest level.
How do you make a choice between one option or another? In other words, you speak very eloquently about the balance between carbohydrates and protein, but you know it.
Right.
How would I know it? Do you look on a label?
That's one way to do it, although the labels don't tell us all that much. So what I tell people to strive for is food in its most natural state, in its most natural form.
That makes sense. Sure.
And if you're choosing those foods that have been identified as carbohydrate and protein in the categories I just gave you, the green leafy vegetables and the colorful vegetables, the legumes, the nuts, and the beans, and then the fruits, the fresh fruits and the grains, those are your carbohydrate sources. And if you're choosing ones that are the most unprocessed, unrefined, in its natural state, then you're ahead of the game.
Oh, there's so much to learn about this, and I don't know about our viewers, but I'm really excited about the opportunity to go through this. Look, Dr. Paul and I also discussed how you can contribute or ask questions. Yeah. And you go to looktvonline.com, and we're going to list certain nutritional guidelines.
Absolutely, yeah, and I can provide some choices, as you just described, that would be helpful for people to choose from in terms of carbohydrates and proteins. So, for example, a morning breakfast would be some oatmeal and some egg whites or some yogurt. That would be a perfect combination of that 2-to-1 ratio of carbohydrate to protein.
And you're also going to start me on a new diet because I'm going
ready.
to stick to this, I'm telling you.
I'm holding you to it.
You will do that. All right, so I'll see you next week. And during the week, please check in on looktvonline.com because we'll have some nutritional tips for you, some guidelines, and also give you an opportunity to ask us some questions which we can address next week.
Super.
We good?
We're good.
I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jesse.
And to see this interview again, head to our website, looktvonline.com.